Hello, everybody. Let's see. Hey, Max. We are going to give a couple minutes for people to arrive. Hope you're doing well. Let me go ahead and pull up Edmodo and we can check out what you guys have so far. I heart turtles. This is great. Max, if you want to send your Google site in, feel free. We'll just wait here for a minute. And you can either send the link in or post it to Edmodo. Great. Let's see. Now, Max. Oh, Max, I think maybe you're sending what you see. Huh. Max, try, let's see here. No, it looks like that's a Google site. That's strange. So, if you go, oh, I just went through that pretty fast, but the way to figure out what the URL for your site is to click the gear up here and sharing and permissions, and it has that there. So it looks like that's what you did. I don't know what to tell you, Max. Let me try that one more time. Wait. Oh no, that did work. Okay, so just the CMS Charlotte-Mecklenburg school really threw me off. I think I thought this was a real Charlotte-Mecklenburg site it was routing me to. So good for you, Max. Threw me off a little bit. Very cool. All right. Oops. See my half marathon. Okay, there we go. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Max, did you download Inkscape? Last semester, last spring, did you download Inkscape on your computer? well, we're going to go ahead, and that's what we're actually starting on today. Max, go ahead and if you would, please message me whether or not you did, just so I know. I'm going to go ahead and go through the process of downloading Inkscape and going through SVGs again so that it will be on the recording. But I just kind of want to check in with you. Okay. Hey, Max. You're muted.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
What do we do again?
Oh, I was asking, did you download Inkscape in the spring?
Inkscape?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Okay, great. That's perfect. I just wanted to know because I knew you'd been in YEOT before, and I didn't want. I wasn't sure if this was going to be completely a repeat for you, and so I just wanted to make sure we were going the right pace. All right.
No, I haven't done Inkscape before.
Perfect. All right. So Inkscape. Let me go ahead and bring up my note set here. Well, Inkscape is going to be the software that allows you to create the SVG files, which we'll learn about in just a second. Those are called vector files. That's going to let you personalize graphics or make your own graphics to make things like business cards for little businesses or just for yourself. And then also decorate things, I know, using the laser cutter or using the vinyl cutter to make stickers. And actually, vector graphics are used widely now across the web, either for fonts, which we probably won't get too much into, but fonts or graphics. And then also, we're going to be using Scratch, and so you can actually make your own graphics for 2D video games or for animations using a vector graphic editor like Inkscape. Okay, so we're going to learn about that today. We're also going to learn a little bit about what it means to be a vector graphic. Yes, Max?
I've done Scratch before.
Awesome, perfect. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I've done it a lot. I've done camps doing Scratch.
Awesome, great. All right, let's see. So Max, I'm going to go ahead and put this link in chat. And for those of you watching the recording, I'm going to post that link in Edmodo. I'll actually go ahead and do that now so I don't forget. But don't click yet unless you're confident you know which one you need for your computer. Okay, let me pull up my notes set here. All right. Oops. There we go. All right, so Inkscape is a software program. Let's see. Which version do I use? Great question. We'll get to that in a second, Max. So Inkscape is a software program that allows you to draw and edit vector graphics. It's free and open source alternative to expensive softwares such as Adobe Illustrator, which this is a really famous software. And open source just means that anyone who wants to see the code behind how that software works can get access to it and see that code, which, that means the product is also going to be free. Adobe Illustrator isn't going to let everyone see their code because you have to pay for Adobe Illustrator, which is fine. It's a company trying to make some money. But what's cool about open source is that people can add to the program as well. Anyone can, because they can see the code, they can see how the code works, and so they can make additional features for the software. Can you think of anything else that you've used that's open source? Maybe that people can make, or can you think of anything else that you've ever heard open source with? And that might not be true, Max, or you may have never heard this before, which is totally fine. But can you think of anything else? I'll give you a hint. We looked at the code behind something the other day. The other class, and a previous class, that you could see the stuff behind it. I'm going to put your hand down. You can raise your hand again. Your hand is up from before, so if you want to be unmuted, go ahead and raise your hand. Yeah.
Huh? I was just putting my hand down.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I put your hand down. I'll let you put your hand down now, and I'll leave your hand alone. Okay. So you actually put your hand back up. All right. So one thing that we've talked about in class so far is just the webs. So if you right-click in Google Chrome, you can see all the HTML code behind the websites that you're using. Now, not all aspects of the web are free. You have to pay your service provider to access stuff. But really early on, Tim Berners-Lee kind of made that decision that the web itself, kind of going to these different websites, would be free, and you'd be able to see the HTML behind what was going on, and that has determined a lot of how the web works. We're going to be talking about open source a lot this semester, so I'll be kind of pointing out when we use open source stuff. Linux, if you've heard of Linux, that's open source. It's an open source operating system, whereas Windows and Mac are not open source. Minecraft. Minecraft is pay. You pay to use Minecraft, but they put all of their source code online so that you could see how Minecraft works, which was so cool. Vector graphics are the representations of images based on math expressions. So JPEGs, PNG images, bitmap images, these are words that you may have heard before. They're made up of pixels. Vector images are made up of paths and nodes. We're going to skip through this. So that means that when you zoom in on a bitmap image or a PNG image, you see the separate pixels. On the other hand, when you zoom in on a vector image, because it stores information about kind of how far away different things should be from each other, it doesn't look pixelated. It looks clean still. That means you can scale vector graphics without actually losing image quality, which makes them very powerful on the web. So here's some Scratch Max, which I know you have used. And in Scratch, you can move the different body, or you can kind of take these nodes and move them around, and it allows you to kind of morph the image that's already there. And that's because this is a vector graphic in Scratch. Scratch used to use all bitmap images, or images that were made up of pixels. Okay, and so this is just kind of a graphical example. This would be the vector version of Scratchcat, and this is the bitmap version of Scratchcat. Vector graphics are really great with fonts because they can be resized. So now let's talk about downloading and installing. So, Max, can you go ahead and put your hand down? Thank you. I didn't want to put your hand down and then we're in a, okay, can you raise your hand if you're using a Mac? Great. Okay, so there are special instructions for using a Mac, and I believe Jasper, you are using a Mac, so we're going to have to go through this with you. But if you are using a PC, it's very easy to download and use Inkscape, and I'm actually going to go through that process today. I removed Inkscape from my computer so that I'd be able to go through it with you. But let me briefly talk about exports first. So in order to use Inkscape on a Mac, the first thing you're going to have to do is download and install Xquartz. And I will put this up on Edmodo as well for you, Jasper. And then restart your computer and then download and install Inkscape on your Mac. And then it is really important that you do it in that order. So you download Xquartz, you install Xquartz, you restart your computer, then you download and install Inkscape. And it actually doesn't matter if you download that first or download that now. As long as you don't install it before Xquartz is on your machine. Xquartz must be on your machine, and then you must restart your machine before you install Inkscape. And the reason is, when the first time you open Inkscape, it's going to ask to find Xquartz. Okay? And this is going to, it is going to just make your life a lot easier if Xquartz is already on your computer. So, anyone with a Mac, if you need special help on Monday, I can kind of help walk through this process with you again. But hopefully you should be able to take a look at these slides and watch the recording and pause and play as we move along. As a heads up, especially on Macs, it's going to take a while for the first time it loads. This is open source free software, so in some ways it's not as reliable as software you pay for, like Adobe Illustrator. I will say it is very safe. We would never ask you to download something that is not safe in Young Engineers of Today. Okay, so it's just, it can take a little bit longer, but it's very safe. And then if you're using a Mac, Xquartz is going to be running and Inkscape at the same time. So it'll look like up in your very, very top, it'll look like the application X11 is running, and that's because that's Xquartz. Xquartz just allows you to run Windows programs on a Mac. It's pretty neat when you think about it. All right. So Macs, let's go through this version. So what we're going to do is we're going to download Mac for Windows, this middle one here. Go ahead and click that. And which version you're going to get depends on which kind of computer that you have. I recommend using the installer, and Max, I would try the 32-bit unless you know you have a 64-bit computer. Okay, so when in doubt, go for the 32-bit and choose this installer. You want the latest stable version. Okay, that's the one you want. I'm going to choose mine. All right. Max, go ahead and raise your hand once you were able to download that installer. Oh, okay, great. Click on that link, and it's going to help you. That it does a setup wizard, which is nice. It's just an easy way to walk through the installation process. And you can just click Next. Okay, so it looks like Inkscape did not get fully taken off of my computer. So, oh, looks like Max is raising and lowering his hand. Hey, Max, what's your question?
How about you saying to download the 32-bit window? Which installer do I use? Installer SI, installer XEXE. Which one do I use?
I would use this first one.
Okay.
That's a great question, and it's just a little bit easier to use. The EXE would also work, but it is just a little bit more user-friendly to use this guy. And essentially, once that installer opens, you're going to click Next as you move through the installation process. It's going to ask kind of things like where you want. You can pretty much just agree and hit Next through that entire installation process. Once you click on the little link to start the installer. And that may take some time as it installs. And so what we're going to do actually is continue on with the presentation, learning a little bit more about the sorts of things you can do with graphics files. And Max, just shoot me a question or raise your hand if you have any questions as we go through this. All right, so a big reason that we learn about Inkscape is it's how we're able to use the laser cutter to make like the cool, unique things that the laser cutter is really known for and really good at. So, for instance, this laser cutter, we have these several flat pieces of wood that have been added together to make this really cool light design in this lamp. This headboard here was made using a laser cutter. You can see fabric. So there's really so much that a laser cutter you can do. And some of these images were definitely made with vector graphics. Like you can see this text probably was, and this text as well. But some were made with bitmap images, and that's this face. So the way a laser cutter works, it takes a laser, focuses it, and adds gas as well. So that has the laser that's very focused with gas, and that creates this jet that burns at a very, very high temperature. But it's very, very, very precise, and it can turn on and off very quickly, and the temperature can be controlled very finely. Okay, and that's all right there, that laser right there. And when you see the laser cutter being used at the Fab Lab in Charlotte, when you see that that light, that piece of light, that's actually not the laser. Max, do you know what that piece of light is right there? Raise your hand or type in the answer. Do you know what this light is? It's not the laser. It's actually the piece of wood or the piece of cardboard burning. So that's what you see with that light right there, which is pretty neat. The three ways kind of this laser cutter works is that it can either cut pieces out, actually cut through the whatever material you put underneath it. It can just cut to engrave so it doesn't burn all the way through, or it can raster. Okay, raster will be using bitmap images. Engrave and cut is generally, typically going to be using vector images. So let's talk about what that means. Oops. What if you were going to trace around something with that laser cutter, you want that clean lines, you're going to be using vectors, vector images. If you're going to engrave something where you have kind of multiple, like the face, where you want to be able to show the different, lots of detail, show some pieces are darker than others, like they should burn certain parts of the wood more than other parts of the wood, that's typically going to be a bitmap image. So here's our example. You can take this picture of this guy and change it into grayscale, which just means gray and black and white. And then down on the suit, the laser stayed in one spot longer. You see it's darker than up here on his nose. The laser stayed in that spot a little bit less time so that the burn wasn't quite as dark. Lots of cool things you can do with cutting with vector. What's going to be really neat and what we're going to learn new this year, it's different from what we've done with vectors in the past, is that we're going to learn about these connections that we can make in order to build things that will be able to fit together, and that'll be really cool. In the past, and we will most likely do this again this semester as well, we've done engraving where we take vector images and we put them on pieces of wood or etc. But now we're actually going to be able to use Inkscape to create pieces that you can snap together, which is really neat. It's also a cool brain puzzle when you sit and think about, how am I going to take this Ferris wheel and make it with these 2D pieces that will all fit together in the end. This is just a little example of how that bitmap works. So you can either turn up the power of your laser so that it gets darker, or you could slow down the speed of the laser so it'll stay in a spot for a little bit longer. And here's another example of that. This concept of kind of taking this 3D shape and being able to break it into these 2D slices is a really cool kind of thought experiment. So one thing that we're going to learn here probably next week is how to take images that are bitmap and trace them so that you can create a vector image. But first, we're just going to start with the basics of how to use Inkscape. And this is going to allow us to use Inkscape to create vector graphics for the laser cutter, but also for things like Scratch. So Max, how are we doing? Where are you in the process? Raise your hand if you want me to call on you instead of typing. I don't want to. Just let me know, how is Inkscape? Were you able to download the installer, or is it installing right now? All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the Inkscape since I have not heard back, Max. And then this will be on the recording for people to see. If it hasn't finished installing, or if you need any help with installing, let me know. But you can also have the recording to refer back to. So with Inkscape, kind of some of the first things to know, there are certain preferences that we recommend. For Mac, these are actually X11 preferences. So you probably want to enable key equivalence. What that means is that with a Mac, you're going to be using Command-C instead of Control-C. This will allow you to still use Command-C as opposed to just the Microsoft Word ones. Option keys, enable syncing, and update clipboard. So go ahead and pause on this screen if you have a Mac so that you can go do that. You can change these. Navigating the canvas, in order to move up and down, you can use the scroll wheel on your computer or laptop. And then to zoom in and out, you actually can hold down Control and use the scroll wheel, or use plus and minus on the keyboard. So let me show you that. So I can scroll using my scroll wheel, scroll up and down. If I'm zoomed in, which I actually just did on my trackpad, but to zoom in, a reminder, you can hold down Control on your keyboard and zoom in and out. If I'm zoomed in and I want to move to the left or right, I can hold down Shift and use my scroll wheel to move left and right. If I don't hold down Shift, then I just move left and right. Let me zoom out by doing Control up and down. So the scroll wheel is really nice because it actually allows you to control a lot of the movement of the canvas. So the first thing we're going to kind of learn here is how to create a simple shape. So if you look up at your toolbar here, you'll see that this tool is the select tool, and we're going to be using that a lot. I can create, let's start with a circle. So you select that on your side there, create a circle. You can click and drag, and it allows you to create a circle. Notice how I'm able to make an oval right now. I hold down Control, it locks the ratio. You see at the bottom of my screen, beneath the colors, it says constrained ratio 1:1. This forces it to be a circle. If I don't hold down that control, it can be kind of anywhere. All right. And then I release my mouse, and that I'm left with the circle. Let me zoom in. What can I do with this? I can use my selector tool and select this shape. Down at the bottom, this allows me, if I click right here where it says fill, if I double click that, it opens a side window, whoops, called fill and stroke. That allows me to change the color of both the inside of the shape and the outer line of the shape. So here, under fill, I can choose if I want it to, fade or anything like that. Ooh, that's weird. Right now, I'm saying that it should be filled with a flat color. Then I can choose any of these colors from the bottom of my screen to be filled with. And I can move to stroke, which is the line that surrounds it. And I can do the same thing. I can have a stroke that fades if that's what I want. And you can do stroke style if you want this to be a little bit thicker, which I do. So I'll change my width here to be a little bit thicker. And then stroke paint, and then once you're on this sub page, you can choose the color for stroke paint that you want. Oops. Come on. All right, well, I will investigate that, why it's only changing the fill right now when I click down here. Oh, okay. So I just realized it here. So if I wanted to change the stroke color by using these little boxes down at the bottom, I would hold Shift and click, and that would allow me to change the stroke color. Just clicking is actually always going to change that fill color. There we go. So what I want you to do for those of you watching along with the webinar right now, I want you to see if you can add a square. If you can add a square, and I'll show you how to resize in just a second. Next to our circle, I want you to actually pause the YouTube video and see if you can add a square next to this circle about the same size. That is, let's say, yellow and green. The inside can either be yellow, or the inside is yellow and the border is green. All right, I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. So I'm going to choose the rectangle and squares. Which tool am I going to use? I'm going to use Control, which is going to ensure that I get a square and not a rectangle. If, let's say this menu was closed, I could either just click yellow to set the fill color to yellow and shift click green to set the exterior to green. I could also double click on the fill there and use these different options to handle that as well. Notice right now that the corners of my shape have these boxes in them. All right, this means I'm still in the shape editing stage. And you can actually change things like where it is on the page and the width and height of the shape. You see that up here? That's what the menu looks like. As soon as you click on the selector tool again, the mouse pointer tool again, notice that those options change up here. And instead of having those circles up there, now you have these arrows. If I click on the shape, the arrows actually change. So when the arrows are all kind of jutting away from the shape, these allow you to resize the shape. And holding down Control will lock the ratio. Not holding down the Control will not lock the ratio. And I undid that. To undo that, what I did was I hit Control Z. Control Z. Very helpful. Okay. So getting used to, when you're finished with the shape, getting used to clicking that selector tool again, that's really key to using Inkscape. So I click once and I can resize. I click again, and this allows me to actually rotate my shape. Control kind of locks to the major turns, so like 45 degrees, that sort of stuff. It also allows you to skew your shape. It can be pretty funky. So those are the major transformations. Let's say I want this circle on top of the square. To do that, I'm going to use some of these tools that we see up here. Let's kind of go through some of these. This rotates the selection, so whichever you have selected. I'll use the text for right now, so it'll be a little bit easier to see. Just going to rotate that text counterclockwise. This one will rotate it the opposite direction. This one flips things on the y-axis, or horizontally, yeah, on the across the y-axis. And this thing flips them upside down. It flips them vertically. We'll test these out in a second. What these do, and these are really helpful, they allow you to move things either forwards or backwards. So raise a selection one layer up or lower a selection down. So go ahead, and I want you to change the shape of your square so that it is a rectangle. Make it wider, smaller. And I want you, actually what I'm going to ask you to do now, I want you guys to try and make a stoplight. So use the square that already exists and Control C and Control V, the circles that you have, to get 3 circles. That was Control C and Control V to copy. Copy and paste, and I want you to resize and your rectangle and move and recolor your circles to make a stoplight. And go ahead and try to do that on your own, testing some of the things we've learned so far. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down. Let me go ahead and show you even how to just go through the copy paste thing again. So I'm going to take my square and I'm going to make it red by clicking on red. And I want the outer side to be, let's say, slightly darker red. So I will control or shift click to change the border. I'm going to make this a little taller by pulling on this this arrow down here. This one just makes it taller or shorter. I'm going to take my circle and I'm going to resize it so that it's smaller. I'm going to do that while holding control so I make sure that it stays a circle. I'm going to move it up so that it's in front of the rectangle. I'm actually going to resize it a little bit more. Then I'm going to Control C to copy that circle. Oh, no, that's, and then Control V. Looks like I got to make this rectangle a little taller. Kind of a funky looking stoplight. And then I'll Control C and Control V again. And just change the color. So, red. This stop line should not be red, it should be yellow. Oops. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to differentiate this color yellow. There we go. All right. And there's my stop sign. The next stoplight. The next thing I want to do is a bit easier to see. Is have them all of our stoplight pieces here line up. So right now you can see that there's kind of more space in between these, and they're not all exactly lined up so that their middles all line up on the same. So I'm going to select all three shapes at once. And to do that, you click on one shape, you hold down Shift, and you can click on the other additional shapes while holding down Shift. So click on one, press and hold Shift, and click the others. I'm going to exit out of this fill and stroke menu. And I think I'm being hidden by my GoToWebinar control panel. But what we want to do is align these objects. So a way to get there is to click Object at the top of your screen. And we want Align and Distribute. And for you, this might be on your right sidebar as well. So Align and Distribute, and the way I got there is by clicking the Object menu up at the top of the screen. Align and Distribute. And we want to center all of these circles on the vertical axis. And that just means that you want the line that goes down the middle of the circle to be in line with the line that goes down the middle of your yellow circle, with the line that goes down the middle of your green circle. For those of you who have worked with Tinkercad before, which we will be working with, this is going to be kind of a nice little review. And for those of you who haven't, which is totally good, totally fine, totally good, this will be a good introduction to what it means to align. So we're going to go ahead and center these on the vertical axis. And now what we want to do is we want there to be equal space between them. Instead of you can see there's a little bit less space here than there is here. So we're going to go down to Distribute Centers Equidistantly. Click that. And what that did is it kept the red circle in the same spot and the green circle in the same spot and just moved the yellow so that it would be in the same spot. All right. With these three circles still selected, we're going to group the selected objects. And this is at the bottom right of your screen. You'll see Group Selected Objects. And now my circles act as one. You'll see the dotted line around them is one giant thing. I want you all on your own to think about how would you center these circles now so that they were in the middle of your stop sign or stoplight box. And then how would you group the circles with the rectangle? All right, so this is going to be the last kind of thing that we learned today, but so what you would do is you would click to select your circles and then shift-click to select your rectangle. You're going to center these on the vertical axis. And let's say that your circles were way up here. So you'll shift-click, center on the vertical axis, so the line that goes down the middle of their circles this way And the line that goes down the middle of your rectangle this way, you can think of it the hot dog way, if you've ever heard of the hot dog fold. These are aligned. But now you also want the center of the horizontal center of your circles, which is kind of the line that's going to be going straight through the middle of this yellow one, the waist or the belly button kind of, to be the same as the waist or belly button, the hamburger fold, however you want to think of it, of this rectangle. That's called the horizontal axis, and when you click that, now you can see the center of your circles, which would be like where the middle of your circles are horizontally. It would be where you would fold if you wanted to fold your circles in half if they were a piece of paper. That's going to align with that horizontal center of your light as well, of your rectangle. With those centered vertically and horizontally, now you can group them together. And now we have one shape. You can actually ungroup these things as well, just so you know. And to do that, one thing you can do is just right-click, ungroup, or up here you can go to Object, Ungroup. All right. What I want you all to try to do for Monday is in Inkscape, I want you to try to get Inkscape on your computer. All right, and the first thing that we're going to start off with on Monday is we're going to try to have you guys build your own snowmen. All right. So if you want to start on that challenge, go for it. That is how we're going to be starting class on Monday. And it's just good practice on how to align your pieces. So a little preview here. And we'll actually take the time to align these things. But it'll end up looking something like this, a little bit more detailed. All right. So Inkscape for Monday, definitely go through this stoplight exercise if you have not. The only way to learn Inkscape and to become familiar with moving shapes around is to practice. While you might start off with something really simple like a snowman or just a rectangle in circles, this is going to be how you're able to create really cool creations like we saw with this Ferris wheel, where you can design and build your own 3D designs, essentially, out of 2D shapes. Have a wonderful weekend and keep working on those Google sites.